Hey guys, Languagehacker here. Patch notes just came out, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to hop right in, talk about my thoughts on the patch, and why I like or dislike some of these changes. Changes to standard battlegrounds and mercenaries. Okay, dev comments. We have a lot of big standard balance changes coming this patch and one for wild, which are attempting to accomplish a few different goals. I like that they started adding this sort of like commentary so we actually get an insight into what they're trying to do. First, we want to lower the power level of the most powerful decks in the current metagame, Fell Demon Hunter and Control Warrior variants. Okay. Roughly half of the changes in this patch are balance motivated and intended to target the win rates of these decks directly. The rest of the changes in this patch are not primarily motivated by power level, but are instead focusing on improving the play against experience of some of the more polarizing cards in the game. Excellent. Love this commentary. Decks that are busted, change them so they're less busted, and cards that feel bad to play against, that are very polarizing, reduce their power level a little bit. Love it. I'm on board with what they've said so far. The following cards have been adjusted to have the power reduced. Shield Shatter. Used to deal 5, now it deals 4 damage to all minions, but the cost is still the same. So you can combo it together with, So you can combo it together with Frozen Buckler still. Seems fine. Kills fewer things now because of the breakpoint, 4 health versus 5 health, but it's still pretty good. Still board clear, still clears up Rogue Pirate, still clears up most of the Demon Hunter boards. It won't clear like Naga Mage stuff now, but like, okay, reasonable. You know what? Fine. Title Revenants. Old one is deal 5, gain 8. New one is deal 5, gain 5. Seems fine. 8 honestly seemed like a little excessive. This seems like a reasonable change. Nelly's Pirate Ship. So this is the Colossal summoned by Nelly, which is the Colossal minion that Warrior has. New Death Rattle. Add Nelly's Pirate Crew to your hand. They cost 1 less, which means that instead of every pirate card costing 1, it's just reduced by 1 mana. That's a pretty big change. That's actually a huge change. That's probably unplayable. So if you think about all the pirates in the game, roughly half of them do not get changed very much by this. There's a lot of 2-mana pirates, and there is one 1-mana pirate. But all the pirates available to Warrior, this greatly reduces the power level of that. For anything that's not 2 mana. Because all the 2 mana ones would still cost 1 mana as if it was unnerfed. But everything that costs 3 more now just costs 1 less, which actually is a noticeable nerf. And I think that's probably... Would I say that's fair? I think it's reasonable. But 1 less, it probably makes the card unplayable. Obviously not having Smite for 1 mana is the big thing, right? But this just in general reduces the power level and tempo you get from the Nelly. I think it's fine to have the discounts. I think this is maybe a bit too big of a nerf, because this is almost unplayable now. Like, who cares if you're playing a 5-mana Smite now versus a 6-mana Smite? You don't get that much out of Nelly. The upside was that you get decent stats for it, and then you also get a board swing after. This is just decent stats into slightly decent stats. That doesn't seem very good. I don't think I like... The thing is, I don't know how they could change this in another way. Like, the other way would be what? Changing the main Colossal body to be more than 7 mana, so that it's more expensive to get the tempo swing. But this pretty much guts the card. I don't think Nelly's Pirate Ship is playable unless the rest of the meta also changes considerably. Like, this is still a very powerful card, but compared to what it was before, we don't want this in our deck right now. It's a little sad. Okay. From the Depths, old. Actually, are there comments on this? No, there are not. From the Depths, old costs 3, new costs 4. I strongly dislike this. I was afraid that they would do this change, and let me explain why I don't like it. So, let me preface this by saying that mana cheat cards can be very problematic, especially when you change things to 0 mana. And with Double from the Depths as an example, you end up having a huge 0 mana board swings after you play stuff like Finley, or when you dredge up different cards in decks like both Control Warrior and Charge Warrior, right? In Control Warrior, they just gain the tempo swing to keep them not behind, and then they just do their own stuff. And Charge Warrior, it gets their stuff so cheap that you die on like turn 7 or 8. So I think both of those are problematic things. However, I think there's a different way to change this. Changing it to 4 mana causes multiple problems, and let me explain them. One, obviously it's 4 mana now, which is almost unplayable. You might still play this. I mean, so far, based on what I've seen, I don't think we're playing Warrior anymore. But the problem with this is not that, oh, it's just 1 mana more expensive, it's a bit slower. Warrior has no playable cards now until turn 4. every controller charge warrior deck is literally unplayable now. There is nothing you can play early game. Your early game is now armor from the depths, die on turn 5, which I don't think is good. So that's one of the issues changing it to 4. I still think you should nerf it. I'm not saying leave it at 3 because it is quite powerful. And I don't think reducing the cost of like 4 cards in the bottom of your deck or 3 is... You can't keep getting away. But changing it to 4 mana has the other effect of making Warrior unplayable because there are no early game plays for Warrior now. And control decks don't always need early game plays, but the way Hearthstone has kind of moved at this point in its lifespan is that you have to do stuff. You can't just be control deck. You can't pass, then remove, and then win the game from that. So this just... Yeah, it nerfs from the depths, but it actually just destroys Warrior's early game, right? And let me compare this to some other cards too that Warrior can run. So we can run Outrider's Axe. It costs 4 mana. We can run Lava Gorger, the new card from the news set. It also costs 4 mana. We can play School Teacher. It also costs 4 mana. So you see this problem where everything costs 4 more mana, and now you're literally doing nothing for the first 2 turns of the game. I think this is not a good change. So what I would have done is I would have changed it to 2 mana, and still let it reduce the cost of the bottom 5 cards of your deck by 2, not 3, and then dredge. So what this does is it still allows you to get like slightly, tempo swingy plays, but it doesn't have completely game-changing like ending stuff. You can't from the depths on 2 and then Nelly on 3. Discounting it from 2 changes a lot of breakpoints at that point in terms of mana cost for the cards that are in your deck. If you do play from the depths on 2, oh, nice, I can play Nelly on turn 5, but you have to consider what you actually want to put on top of your deck because you're not just slamming it next turn. If you play this on turn 2, you have to think ahead. Okay, Nelly, 3 turns later, do I have stuff in my hand? Can I do stuff until turn 5? No. I guess I can't take a Nelly. I have to take something defensive. I have to take a weapon, etc. And I think that actually adds some complexity to it instead of from the depths, damn, put the strongest card on top now. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just so cheap that I can play it. So I think changing it to 2 is probably better. Let's read the comment, because maybe I'm off base. Dev comment, both Charge Warrior and Control Warrior variants have been overperforming on the ladder, and trend towards higher and higher win rates the further up the ladder you climb. Fair. These decks share several key cards, and this batch of changes is intended to lower the win rates of both of those archetypes. We don't want or expect these decks to disappear entirely after the changes. Hello? Are we looking at the same changes here? But we do hope that some of the more frustrating plays that they are capable of, such as Nelly creating 1-cost smite, will be removed or weakened going forward. I'm going to talk a bit about their philosophy right now in terms of designing cards like Nelly. And this also extends to not just Nelly, but cards like Raid the Docks that gives you the Juggernaut in Pirate Warrior. And I guess just in general having cards that exist in a pool of other cards. It is not, in my opinion, that complicated to remove 1 card from a pool of cards. There should be, like, in terms of coding or whatever, like, you create an exception, right? You can play this, however, you cannot get smite. So killing the card does not make as much sense to me as just saying, all right, you can't get smite from Nelly anymore. That sounded like a reasonable change to me. Because you still get the 1-mana pirate, so you still get some tempo out of it, but it doesn't just end the game, and it doesn't, have you die against Charge Warrior or whatever. So I really don't like this. I think this will 100% kill a class. This class is not playable anymore. There might be an archetype that pops up now that's sort of like mid-rangey, but it's going to be not good. So I get what they're trying to do, and I like that they're trying to make changes. I don't think these are good changes. This change, I think, is reasonable. The Tiled Revenant change is fine. Shield Shatter, you know what? I'm a Control Warrior main, so disclaimer, I do like Control Warrior, but Control Warrior and Charge Warrior, I guess, are just insane. So I'm fine that it needs to be changed. I'm not going to be, delusional to say, oh, Warrior's fine. It did need a change. One of these changes might be fine. All of these changes together, it's just, I don't think so. Anyways, so chat's saying that changing it to 4 mana from the depths also removes it from the School Teacher pool. While that's true, I don't think that's necessarily their main purpose of changing it to 4 mana. It is a side effect, and that's something else to consider, because now School Teacher loses one of the ways that the deck can high roll a little bit, which again isn't necessarily bad, but if you were just reduce the impact of the card itself, that also reduces the high roll potential. Now it's just that high roll potential doesn't exist. Also, it's harder to remove stuff. Also, this high roll potential is gone as well. It's just, you're removing more and more stuff, and then the deck's just going to run out of stuff. Anyways, I don't like these changes so far. Let's keep going. Carry Fell Soul. 777 up from 666 makes sense. Card effect is powerful. Changing what mana keeps it in line, I guess, with the strength of a Zillag without, having it coined out on turn 5 and you lose the game, or coined out on turn 4 because your opponent high rolled Sigil of Alacrity. This seems like a reasonable change, and a little bit of an attack and health buff as well. Should help it. I mean, it's fine. It felt way too strong, and now it probably is more in line with what it should be. Battle Worn Vanguard. It's a 2/2/1 now. Okay. Demon Hunter has been the other standout win rate class since the release of the latest mini set. Although we're happy to see the new and improved Zillag making a splash, we aren't as excited about Carrier being used to cheat out a copy of Zillag ahead of schedule. Fair. In addition to slowing down the interaction, we're shaving 1 health off Battle-Worn Vanguard in order to lower the odds that it sticks early and stumbles the game. Reasonable changes. This makes sense. This card was overperforming. Let's tweak it slightly. Okay. This card, I don't know if this card in particular was overperforming, but it reduces some of the snowball effects. Cool. Reasonable changes. Why isn't that there for Warrior? Anyways, I like both of these changes. Makes sense. Also makes sense. This makes it a bit more susceptible to stuff like Maelstrom Portal, just 1 Pyrotic, Mage Ping. In the mirror, it dies to hero power now. Druid can deal with it too. Seems good. Honestly, I thought Demon Hunter was a little bit too strong, and I wasn't sure quite what to change. Maybe these are 2 changes. Couple tweaks, see if it helps, and then they can go from there. Wild Pawn Knoll. 5 used to be 4/5, now it's 3/5. Okay, let's read the comment before I complain about this. Dev comment. Rogue has been one of the most played classes in Standard, and it didn't feel right for us to hit the other popular classes without taking a small amount of power out of Rogue. Fair. Wild Pawn Knoll has been a tricky card for us to get right, but we're optimistic that the latest change to it will leave both the card and the class in the right place. I agree that this is the card that needs to be changed. I disagree that this is how the change should be. I think changing this back to 5 mana, it was, so as a bit of history, this card used to be a 5 mana 4/5, and then Blizzard said, our bad, a little bit too strong, and they changed it, I think, to a 6 mana 3/5. I think having it as a 4/5 is still fine. I think having it at 5 mana is not okay. So the reason, and let me explain more instead of just it needs to be changed by 1 mana. Most tempo decks in the game right now struggle at holding onto board against decks like Demon Hunter and Rogue because of the incredibly powerful reactive and proactive tool set that they have. And Wild Pawn Knoll coming out for 0 or 1 mana on turns 2 or 3 just completely blows any other tempo deck out of the water. Any board advantage you can get by playing an aggro tempo deck is just evaporated by Demon Hunter, and in this case I'm talking about Rogue, but it applies to Demon Hunter as well. Their early tool set, and Wild Pawn Knoll is that tool set because you're hard mulliganing for this and tradables every game as Rogue. You play Shroud, so you draw this more often, so you almost always have at least 1 null on 3, occasionally on 2, and occasionally 2 nulls on 2 or 3, and all of those scenarios feel awful. I think if you bump this card up 1 mana, it comes down A, a turn later, and B, you don't have 2 of these unless your hand was absolutely godly, and that would still be on turns 3, probably 3 or 4, depending on your hand. So I'm still fine leaving this as a 4/5, but I think it's a mistake to leave it at 5 mana. I think you tweak this up 1 more, and Rogue still feels like it's fine. Especially when you're changing Warrior, which is one of its worst matchups, and when you're changing one of the other powerful classes. I think tuning this down a little bit would help as well. So I would like to see this as a 6/4/5. I mean, if you really want, leave it as a 6/3/5. My main issue is not its stats, although its stats is strong. The reason the stats are a problem is because it comes out so cheap. So I would prefer to just bump this up by 1 mana. You can still keep the feel of the deck. The Knoll can still be 0 mana. You just have to stay disguised an extra turn, or you have to accept that Knoll costs 1 mana. Oh, 1 mana 4/5 rush. Okay, next up, Lightforged Carrier. 7 to 8 mana. Dev comment. We are happy to see hero cards pack a late game punch for their classes, but felt like Carol was providing that power a turn earlier than she should have been. Paladin is in a pretty healthy spot in the current metagame, and with the rest of the changes we are seeing this patch, we expect things to stay that way. I like this preemptive change. I've been talking about this nerf honestly for like months at this point. I'm glad that they're doing it now, and it makes sense that they're doing it together with changes to other powerful classes. For example, Warrior was one of the classes that was keeping Control Paladin in check. So with Warrior getting substantially weaker, Paladin will rise up a bit stronger because it's decent against Rogue, it's decent against Demon Hunter, just some of the meta classes. So preemptively changing this up a little bit, I think, is very smart. It also reduces the impact of Meg Paladin. Meg Paladin has a very, explosive game plan occasionally, and then it had a Carriel to fall back on, and now that Carriel comes down a little bit later. So you have to consider whether or not you still want this in the deck. You probably do, but reasonable change. I like this. Next up, Spite Lash Siren. It is now a 5-mana 2/6 up from a 4-mana 2/5. Spite Lash Siren is a fun and interesting card for Naga Mage decks, but we felt that it was capable of effectively ending games in a way that didn't leave enough room for counterplay. Absolutely agree. We are hoping that by moving this effect back one turn, opponents of the card will have more time to interact with the wide boards it is capable of generating. Absolutely agreed. Completely reasonable change. Having this pop off on turn 4 with coin, or turn 5, generally it's on turn 5, even if you do have the coin, but around turn 5, the game just ends. Again, any other tempo deck, you fight for board, they delete your board, have a full board themselves, and then you're just like, all right, well, I guess I lost the game because they had this. You have one extra turn, which actually matters a lot. Aggressive decks can try to kill them on the turn they pop off. Like, they'll pop off, clear board, and then maybe they're low enough that they die to burst. Control decks have a bit more time to find removal for this. I like this. This just makes sense. The card and deck is still very good, especially when other decks are being changed. But I think I like this tweak. Earthen Scales. Cost 2 mana. Okay, Druid hasn't been that strong. Druid hasn't been a dominant class since the mini set, but it can still be quite frustrating to lose to. We felt Earthen Scales was doing too much for 1 mana card, and that increasing its cost by 1, the class should be a little easier to attack in the mid-game. I agree. Most of the ways it stabilizes is like a Miracle Growth into an Earthen Scales or evade Earthen Scales, and that's no longer as easy to do. Druid is still going to just run over any control deck at this point, but now against the, aggressive archetypes, it does struggle a little bit more. Did we need to make this change? Maybe not, but I don't mind it, because Druid was very frustrating to lose to with its game plan, so I think attacking its defensive package just a little bit makes sense. They could have changed some other stuff too. Scale is very strong. The Ram cards are strong, but it looks like they want to keep that sort of intact and just say, all right, sometimes you die. Fine. Next up, this is a wild card, actually. Lightning Bloom. Instead of gaining, it refreshes. It's a pretty big change. It means you can't go over the current mana crystals you have available. Man, I wish we had this change when this was in Standard. This would have been so nice to have when it was in Standard. It's sad that they waited so long to change it. Anyways. This is not about wild, we're talking about Standard. Mr. Smite costs 7 mana. Sure, fine. This has a couple of impacts. One, rogue pop-offs are a bit less impactful. Smite Gone Fishing to pull up a Sunken Vessel of pirates in your deck that comes out 1 turn later. Smite Shadow Step Smite can't happen at the same time. Smite Shadow Step is more expensive, and then replaying the Smite after is more expensive as well, which reduces the impact of late-game pirate charges, including with Edwin post Scabs. So I like this. It impacts Rogue. It impacts Charge Warrior quite a bit, and it also impacts Nelly indirectly as well. Oh my god. Jeez. Warrior's so dead. Anyways, Mr. Smite is a powerful game-ending card that doesn't need to be quite as powerful as he is on curve. Agreed. The change will hopefully make the card a little bit more tolerable in the mid-game, while also slowing down the various combos he's involved in. I think that's fair. How does it impact Nelly? Well, this you can get from Nelly, right? I don't know if you were here for the earlier part of the conversation, but Nelly got changed. So Nelly only discounts the pirates by 1 mana. It does not set them to 1, it discounts them by 1. So if you just discover Smite from Nelly's pirate ship, that Smite you get is now only 6 mana from Nelly, which is a pretty big deal. I think this change is reasonable. A lot of the times I'm frustrated with Smite is not because the game ends because I got smited. It's because Smite was just way too efficient and it's like nothing, I can't really play around it. Tweaking the mana a little bit will prevent combos from being frustrating to some extent, and it will just reduce slightly the aggressiveness of the finishers of some of these decks. I think that's fine. School Teacher. It's a 4-mana 4/3 now? Ooh. Though we're generally happy with the kinds of gameplay that School Teacher provides, a card with a premium battlecry effect doesn't also need to have premium stats. We expect this card to still see plenty of play, but we hope that it won't be quite as ubiquitous as it is now. Any craftable versions of this card listed above will be eligible. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so if you do have a bunch of these cards that you want to disenchant for the next 2 weeks, you get full dust refunds. So if you've been saving up duplicates, do that now. I don't think we needed to change this. This was a really cool card. I think it's okay. So in general, this reduces the aggressiveness of this in tempo decks. Man, this hits Warrior too. Like, oh my god. This can't have been the right play. Let me finish talking about the school teacher. I think this is fine. Like, this card was quite powerful, and also together with Brand, so you can still have the crazy pop-offs, but now it's just slightly weaker. I think that's okay. I'm not really attached to this change. Every deck we still ran this in, we probably still run in because we play this for the battle cry. The stats were great, but the main thing is we get a cheap battle cry with an acceptably statted minion. Now it's slightly less acceptable, but I mean, what are you gonna do? Basically, they're trying to tweak the power level. My understanding is that they're trying to tweak the power level of the meta in general by a little bit, because it does feel a little explosive, which in general I think is fine. So to recap, they absolutely, like, Warrior's unplayable. Half these cards, how many changes affect Warrior here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's 12 changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. One is wild, though. 12 changes, 6 of these impact Warrior. Like, what? So, summary. Nerfing general power level of some of the top decks. I like it. Killing classes. Don't like it. Demon Hunter was touched slightly. It's fine. Rogue was touched slightly. Some preemptive changes so that the other meta decks don't come out of, power level relevancy. Great. I like that. A little bit of touch to Mage, Druid, across the board. Shaman didn't get touched. Shaman's probably going to be pretty good. Priest doesn't look like it got touched as well. So Priest is going to be quite strong. Warlock maybe gets a little bump in popularity now that some of these decks get weaker too. But I really think they missed the ball on this Warrior thing. Anyways, I'm going to go try to figure out what's playable now because there's going to be some tournaments tonight. So these are my thoughts on the patches, on the patch notes. Let me know what you think. Are you a Warrior main? Are you sad? Are you not a Warrior main? Are you happy? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.